Okay, well, thanks very much, everybody. Investing in every child's right to early education is at the very core of the Professional Pedagogy Project. But this is more than a financial investment, and I think quite often we get very caught up in resources and the resources that we need to do things. This for us, and it was almost 2 years ago now when we were putting the application together for this particular project, it's an investment of vision and commitment, value and respect for early childhood care and education. The focus of this presentation, though, will be very much on the Donegal early childhood sector in terms of where we are now and what we need to pay attention to in terms of giving national policy a local place. So first of all, the good stuff. I was always told to start with the good stuff. Few of us could deny the massive and welcome developments that our early childhood sector has seen, I suppose, over the last 10 to 12 years. The Equal Opportunities Childcare Programme and the National Childcare Investment Programme between 2000 and 2008 saw an over €30 million capital investment in the infrastructure in our county. We have a strong and vibrant County Childcare Committee that has been at the forefront of developing needs-led training initiatives, some of which are now destined for a national platform, such as their success. We have achieved 100% uptake on the free preschool year across all our early childhood services, and we have surpassed the minimum required levels of training for compliance with our funding schemes. Ireland now has at its disposal a range of contemporary and forward-thinking practice frameworks. We have ASHTR, the Early Childhood Curriculum, Shílte, the National Quality Framework, the National Literacy and Numeracy Strategy, which for the first time places a strong emphasis on the role of early childhood care and education in the formation of literacy and numeracy skills, and the Workforce Development Plan for the sector. We also have really high hopes for the new National Early Years Strategy that is currently being developed, and all these policy initiatives have the potential to transform what we know as our early childhood care and education sector. It's without doubt that we've got many things right. But before we get too big-headed, you know where I'm going. On balance, we've also got many things very wrong. For example, there has to be some irony in the fact that the Equal Opportunities Childcare Programme was a programme that was initially developed to enable women to join the workforce. And now what we've done is we've created a sector where childcare is probably one of the most expensive in Europe, and it now acts as an inhibitor to women accessing the workforce. And that's fact, and we can dress it up how we like, but that's what we've done. Yes, we now have more policy frameworks than shelves to put them on, but writing policy has never been one of our shortcomings. In fact, we're extremely good at it. It's providing the resources and the practical plans to implement policy seems to be where we always get stuck. The lack of a resourced implementation plan for early childhood curriculum and quality frameworks is exactly what has necessitated the innovative responses to upskilling our workforce that we see here today in the Professional Pedagogy Project. We use many warm and fuzzy citations within our policy documents, valuing all children as citizens with equal rights, giving children a voice, protecting children's health and well-being, to name but a few. However, you'll find in your pack there today a policy brief prepared by Start Strong around the regulation of childminders. In Donegal, we have an estimated 300 plus paid childminders operating across our county. This is double the amount of early childhood services operating in our county. And the vast majority of these are operating under the regulatory framework. Of these, only 19 are notified to the HSE. So there's only 19 that are actually on the legislative radar. Again, there's irony in the fact that due to the introduction of the new Family and Children Support Agency in 2013, Donegal will lose its only support mechanism to the unregulated childminding sector in the form of the Childminders Advisory Officer working through DCC. This is a child protection catastrophe just waiting to happen. However, it goes well beyond the scope of this presentation to analyse all the different positives and negatives within our sector. But I do want to draw your attention to an area that is fast becoming one of our biggest challenges, and one which will be used to measure the impact of any government investment and value for money in the future. We are now at a critical juncture in terms of actually achieving educationally effective provision for all our children. And I found myself recently actually stopping using the word quality. I honestly think we have no idea what quality means. It's bandied about, it's used in every document, and I actually don't know what it is. But if we can think of our provision being effective, educationally effective in terms of what we do, maybe it's a bit near the mark. There's a common misconception as well that additional resources would be the answer to all our problems. But indeed, it's much more complex. We need to have a clear vision for the type of early childhood care and education that we actually want for our children. And I don't just mean those who work with children. We as a society, and we as the whole organisational community in County Donegal, need to take ownership of that vision, and we need to get serious about early childhood care and education. And to do this, we have to start at the end. And by that I mean we have to start with the child. Every piece of legislation, policy or guidance documents impresses upon us how we must put the child first. Because this is not about county childcare committees, service providers, educators, training organisations, or even the government. By comparison, we are unimportant. This is about children. We need to be aware of the dispositions, attitudes and skills that our young children need to survive and progress in today's society. We need to commit ourselves to providing educationally effective services that will deliver on this. And if we are to fund this from our public purse, we need to be completely accountable for our effectiveness in doing so. And now, just to give children a voice for a few minutes, we're going to cut to a very short media package to hear some children's voices. This pack was filmed last week by Wallace Media, and it's in a range of early childhood services across the county, from Killybegs to Inishowen.
Keep our families together. Allow me to say your prayers in your own words. Protect us always from anyone who is be cruel. All children should be allowed to live and to grow and grow and grow. If we disable in body and mind, raise us especially. If we sick, nurse and comfort me. Learn something think and feeling. Goes the cow, we need to live happy in the world. Every lost lends your hand. Always do your best for me whenever I'm in your care. Make sure not to eat and drink. Give me things to make me happy and strong.
So what do we need from early education? The most important function of early education is to set children up with the emotional toolkit that they will call upon throughout their lives. Forget the school readiness stuff, being consumed with letter writing, knowing colours, and worst of all, colouring in endless templates of meaningless objects. You know me, folks, I have to mention templates. It doesn't matter where I am. If we look at the themes of Ashter, or early childhood curriculum, themes like well-being, identity and belonging, communicating and exploring and thinking, it becomes clear that this is a curriculum that promotes the dispositions, attitudes and skills for life. So effective early education invests time in life readiness as opposed to school readiness, and that's where our focus needs to be. Children in today's society, more than ever, cyberbullying, text bullying, family dysfunction, and economic crisis have all taken the need to be strong, creative, and resilient to the max. Embedding these values at the earliest stage in our educational process will nurture the child's creativity. And again, I'm not talking about art activities here. I mean the ability to problem solve, to respond to challenge and crisis in their lives, and to find practical solutions. This provides the very foundational skills that we need for tomorrow's entrepreneurs, innovators, educators, and even politicians. Since the launch of Ashter 3 years ago, whilst we await a resourced implementation strategy for our curriculum, in the preschool year alone, almost 200,000 children nationally and over 9,000 children in County Donegal will never have the opportunity to repeat their preschool experience. So regardless of how effective or ineffective it was, that experience, that time is gone. It has passed. So while we continue, I suppose, to faff around and decide what to do, that will continue to happen until such times as we can put some practical responses into action. In relation to this, there seems to be this collective call now for the introduction of a second preschool year. I personally don't believe that this will change things in terms of the overall effectiveness of preschool education. And more importantly, is totally unrealistic in our current financial climate. It would make much more sense to ensure that the educational effectiveness of our existing preschool year is appropriate before we double its availability. A much more realistic and equitable aim would be to provide a second preschool year for children with additional needs and disabilities, really forgotten within the early childhood sector. And there would be an outcry if this was happening in any other sector in terms of supports for special needs. Providing a higher rate of capitation for such children, and by ensuring that the early childhood service can employ appropriately trained personnel to provide meaningful educational opportunities for our most vulnerable children. And this brings us to our county. What do we do in the meantime? At this particular time, we need to be extremely mindful of what's happening in the national context and how this will impact on us in our county. Local service delivery is essential in order to meet national policy objectives. One of the core concepts for early education is visibility. I suppose there's always a danger when there's an organisation like Donegal County Childcare in the county that organisation has ownership for everything to do with early childhood care and education and anything related in that way. This is not so. Services for children and families are the collective responsibility of all agencies in our county. This is important now because under the broader national objective of collaborative working, one of my least favourite terms in the world, 2013 will see Donegal County Childcare being increasingly pulled into a national universal agenda. We've been asked to write exit strategies for our local interagency collaborations. Our limited staff are being framed as a national resource, and that we are being asked to deploy our staff to other counties to ensure national targets are met in such areas as child protection training. an area of work that wasn't our responsibility until next year, or won't be our responsibility to next year. I'm sure that this makes sense in some areas, but I have to caution that it makes no sense at all in the context of County Donegal at any level. The project that we're here to profile today is a local response to a local challenge by a local organisation. We have responded to the challenge of having a significant gap in curriculum training for our sector by going beyond our core programme and seeking practical support for our early childhood workforce. But we cannot continue to do this alone. And I'm stuck. No, I'm not. So what needs to happen? We need to develop a culture of shared responsibility and ownership for early childhood. Each agency in the county needs to look at its strategic plan and proof this plan for the visibility and contribution of supports to the early childhood sector. Our training organisations need to be fully committed to providing the best quality training programmes for our early childhood workforce. Educating the educators of our youngest children requires the highest skilled tutors, lecturers and facilitators. It's just not good enough to think that anyone can teach childcare. Those facilitating the programmes need to hold the appropriate skills, experience and qualifications, regularly access continuing professional development in areas of early childhood policy and practice, and programme content should be relevant, contemporary and fit for purpose. One of the reasons why the Professional Pedagogy Project was developed was to address a significant gap in core pedagogical practice. Things like curriculum planning and assessment for learning. But this begs the question, why? When we have so many accredited childcare programmes in our county, did we have to do this in the first place? Our early childhood sector and our primary sector need to develop strong and meaningful links with each other, especially around the transition from preschool to primary school, and again, in the case of children transferring with additional needs. We need to forget about who does the best job, who does the most important job, and instead learn from and demonstrate mutual respect for each other as professionals in order to put the child first. And most importantly, we need to retain an interagency approach to early childhood in Donegal. A universal agenda is not going to be compatible with the rural and geographically isolated nature of our county. Donegal Childcare needs to retain the ability to provide local needs-led supports. Although the large early childhood agencies in Dublin, such as Bernardo's and Early Childhood Ireland, do some great work, but in a practical sense, this just does not transfer to our county in terms of expense and the practicalities. And this takes us to our workforce. Every piece of research regarding best outcomes for children points to the professional competencies of the early childhood educator. Hardly surprising, nothing we haven't known for years. You can invest all the money you wish in additional free preschool education. You can fund as many schemes to tackle disadvantage, but none of it will make a single bit of difference until you decide to invest in the people who are responsible for delivering to young children. Some facts and figures. An almost 800 strong workforce in the County Donegal early childhood sector. A sector that, despite a monumental decline in demand for full daycare and after-school provision since 2008, has managed not only to retain its infrastructure, but has created an additional 40 jobs in the county due to the extension of preschool services. But educators have a responsibility in this too. Some people in the sector now find themselves in a very different environment to that which they signed up for. And this happens in any sector that experiences transition and change. But in order to undertake this as a professional career, then there has to be an openness to change and a responsibility to upskill to meet the demands of the job. The staff of the early childhood services participating on the Professional Pedagogy Project are an excellent example of such a progressive attitude. So what needs to happen at policy level to support this? At policy level, professional pathways need to be created for the early childhood sector. We need clear progression routes with appropriate salary scales to match professional competency. It's just not satisfactory that we have a workforce educating our youngest children and in instances earning little more than the minimum wage, paying for their own training and professional development, travel and participating in training in their own time. If this is allowed to continue, we are completely foolish in believing that we will ever achieve educationally effective early childhood care and education. So finally, I would ask for your attention. I would urge you to consider the importance of the early childhood sector in our county. It isn't a nice, convenient, but unnecessary part of our profile of services. The early childhood sector is a core component of our employment, economic, and enterprise infrastructure, and without doubt will be the one that will play the most pivotal role in enabling people to return to work as the economy improves. It is therefore worth all our attention. Go raibh míle maith agah.